Welcome back. We are talking China. Moments ago, I spoke with White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley on the latest developments on the negotiations between the U.S. and China.
No, look, it's irrelevant what I want to see China do. What is relevant is what the president wants China to do, which is listen to him and understand. Let's reduce all these barriers, reduce the tariffs, deal honestly. No more intellectual property theft, no more stealing our technology. That stuff's been going on. It's just now being exposed. Everyone knows it, and this president wants it finished.
Joining us right now is the Milken Institute Asia Fellow, former U.S. Ambassador to the Asian Development Bank and former Special Assistant to the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Curtis Chin. Curtis, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here. Good morning, everyone.
How would you characterize the issues around China right now?
You know, the issues we're seeing today have long been there, which, you know, if we are to sum it up, in some ways I'd say it's a little bit of China out of control. And kudos to President Trump for calling China out on behavior that I think many business executives in Asia really know that's what's happening. But Trump is not afraid. You know, 100% I'm with him on trying to reset that U.S.-China relationship.
We had the president of Microsoft on recently and the former CEO, Steve Ballmer, who said it costs Microsoft alone $10 billion a year in profits. The fact that 90% of the companies in China use the Microsoft operating platform, only 1% pay for it. I mean, that's just one example of how they steal.
Well, you know, I think we're seeing across the board, and the big news today that we're seeing breaking is the cyber theft from Marriott in terms of real data. You know, one of the challenges, if you recall, way back when President Obama and President Xi did a deal which was supposed to, you know, tamp down this really cyber war between the countries. And I think we're seeing that deal has not worked. The challenge being that in China in particular, government and business perhaps is more close than they like to admit.
Curtis, how far do you think President Xi and the leadership around him are willing to go to address the concerns that President Trump has raised, you know, in terms of intellectual property theft and subsidies to state companies and barriers to U.S. doing business and selling in China? What are they willing to do to tamp down American concerns?
You know, again, I'm the hopeful one usually on these shows. My hope is that there will be progress, but I think history has shown sometimes it's more rhetoric than reality in terms of what China promises to move things down the road.
Right. Do you think that's their game right now, to basically promise a lot and not deliver any of it? Or do you think they're actually kind of waking up that this is a real issue for the Americans?
I think the reality is going to be somewhere in between. Right now, I call it a pause in this tariffs war between the United States and China, a 90-day pause. But the reality, the troubles between these two both great nations will not be solved in 90 days. But my hope is that there will be incremental progress.
Explain to us what we need to be listening to in the rhetoric that we hear from the Trump administration and from the Chinese leadership, because I think that it's almost like a communication between the two parties that might be missed because it's so nuanced. People criticize President Trump for being very bombastic and very in your face, but I think that there's some nuance going on in terms of how the two sides are communicating in public.
Absolutely. I think one thing people need to focus on is the reality of what will actually happen in terms of action. So a specific example, Chinese have said out of that big G20 101 dinner between Xi and Trump that they would move to immediately purchase agricultural products. So what does immediate mean? Is it we'll give you a timeline for purchases, or will actually product be moving? Will soybeans be moving between the United States and China? So look at the real actions, not just promises and timelines.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the real actions, because one of the real actions they have is their 2025 plan, but then they're also 2035, where they are the #1 producer in technology. And then by 2049, the Communist Party can defeat any military in the world, right? So help reconcile that for me, because I don't think anything is going to be done on the IP theft, technology, the South China Sea, that we're starting to see provocations there. Taiwan's an issue. So, I mean, agriculture is fine, but will anything ever get done when it comes to IP and
And this is important because what you're touching on here is the fact that the economic strength that China has is now being put in their military complex. So it's strengthening them not just economically, but militarily.
You know, all interesting points. You know, I don't think the Chinese, to be quite frank, will ever be able to defeat the U.S. because if the U.S. acts and responds, we need to also think through that it's actually in the interest of China to have a more stable economic and trading relationship. You know, one thing that Trump has been able to do, both domestically and overseas, in a weird way, he's united people about this policy towards China. Down in Washington, we don't see the Democrats criticizing what Republicans are saying about in China.
And the Justice Department is reportedly preparing indictments against the Chinese hackers over this Marriott data breach. This hack collected the personal information of 500 million users. The Justice Department reportedly labeling the breach as part of a Chinese intelligence gathering operation. When we first broke that news in terms of the Marriott hack, nobody was talking about China, but now we know it's all related.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we talk about uniting the world. I mean, the reality, you know, I'm based mainly in Asia with the Milken Institute versus our LA headquarters. The reality is that many in Asia are saying, you know, right on. But it's more difficult for a smaller nation, a small business, to say some of the things that President Trump is saying. But let me also note that trying to bring things, you know, really together, China and the U.S. will both benefit from a more stable trading relation. It doesn't have to be one versus the other and one will win out.
I just want to say that the November CPI is out and the consumer price index is unchanged. Okay, so that was the expectation. It's right in line with expectations, which is unchanged. Are you seeing any impact on the consumer in terms of price increases as a result of these tariffs? We've been waiting on the CPI number because we want to know if the tariffs are sending input costs up, and ultimately if input costs go up for companies, they're going to pass that on to the consumer. We're not seeing it in today's CPI number, which is just breaking right now, hitting the tape.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some of the data where, in fact, companies are absorbing some of the higher costs, but also the reality, things will again slowly be phased in. Let's see what happens in, what is it, 82 days, you know, with the 90-day countdown.
So you're not seeing the impact yet?
What are you hearing from your contacts in China and Asia more broadly about how much the Chinese economy is slowing down and how big a problem that is seen as being for the leadership there?
Yeah, of course, when you look at the data, China continues to grow, but sort of it's slower growth. We see data about debt issues, more likelihood of more corporate bankruptcies. So clearly, China has its own internal challenges. You know, one thing I do every year, you know, I did, I think on Fox last year, I announced my best and worst
yes, tell us about the best
Asia.
and worst list.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away quite yet, but clearly, I think people will be surprised, and my colleague Jose Colatos and I, my take on Xi Jinping. He is probably less strong than people envision. That China has seen the strongest leader in a long time, but in many ways, as we're seeing right now, he may be afraid of a slowing economy and afraid of people behind the scenes now
of protests
seeking to succeed him.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Even though he's a dictator for life. Curtis, it's good to see you.
As always,
thank you so much. Curtis Chan from the Milken Institute there.